Hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to another live Manchester United news, transfer news, takeover news show on the channel. We're live and we're going to dive into all the latest Manchester United news today. Fabrizio Romano has given a massive update on the takeover, the new plans, Omar Barada's plans at United, INEOS's plans, the big Dan Ashworth, what's going on behind the scenes with Dan Ashworth. We've got some breaking news on INEOS making it clear Antony does not make the cut. Fabrizio Romano even gave some detail on this story on Antony and why INEOS do not want Antony. Big sale there. Could Saudi be involved? Antony, Sancho, those players have been told they cannot be at United next season is the big suggestion in the media. Among many other stories, De Ligt, Todibo, we've got some updates on that from Fabrizio Romano. We've got stories about Pelistri, Dan Gore, their loan deals, potential other players going out. We've got loads to dive into in today's show, so please do hit that like button if you have not already, and of course, subscribe down below if you're new, because I do want to talk about a few things with you guys, get your opinions in, interact in the chat. So of course, let me know how you're feeling in the live chat, people, all things United. Let me know how you're feeling about the news that we're going to discuss in today's video. Let me know your thoughts on everything down below as well. Antony's got good enough. I'm sorry I've seen enough. And you know what? This is the second season now. Everyone's allowed a season to adapt. I know that we don't play to Antony's strengths. I know we don't play a style of football that brings the best out of Antony, but this is his second season now. He's not given enough. One season, you're allowed to adapt. If you don't cut it in your second season, I think it's about right that people will lose patience with you. I think that's pretty normal, and I think we'll get into it. It'll be more later in the show. As you can see the order, we're going to dive into the transfer news, but we're going to dive into some interesting things Romano said at the end of the show about how INEOS' sort of new strategy is. You've got 1 to 2 years to prove yourself, and if you don't prove yourself at United in 1 to 2 years, you're out. And a bit of a dig at Jadon, Sancho, Antony, and the likes of those players. So we'll dive right into the news as well. I thought it was Antony Martial. I mean, look, if we could get a load of money for Antony Martial, bang, bang, bang. But Martial's leaving on free in the summer. It's very unlikely Martial's going to leave this transfer window as well. Antony's the worst player I've seen in a United shirt. Well, that's saying a lot, because there has been some stinkers in a United shirt. I don't know if he's the worst, because I feel like if Antony had cost 30 million, we wouldn't be saying he's the worst player to put on a Man United shirt. But he's significantly not great. He's up there. I don't know if he's the worst. I think that is partly to do with his price tag and the expectation, but he's not great. And the thing that's frustrating is I watched Ajax play quite a bit in Ten Hag's final 3 months, and I saw something in Antony to say, yeah, I'd spend 40 million on him. Wouldn't be my first choice. I made that clear in that summer. Antony wouldn't be my first choice at right wing, but, I'd spend 30, 40 million on him. Saw enough to do that. As soon as it went above 40 million, I thought, this is a bit of a waste. But if Ten Hag really wants to, maybe push to 50 million. And I said to you guys in the summer, if it's any more than 50 million, walk away, no matter how much Ten Hag wants him. I think he's no more than 40 million, but 50 million if Ten Hag's desperate. 85 million. Had we got Antony for 40 million, maybe the response would have been a bit different, but he's definitely been poor. I think it's the fact that he's so one-footed. Yeah, I think it's the fact that you just always know what he's going to do. He's so predictable, he's so one-footed, and because you know what he's going to do, and he does so much, thinks so much and takes so much time on the ball, he massively slows down the game. Doesn't he? But let's actually dive into the information. Let's dive into the news, all of that stuff, people, as well. So what is the news coming out? So this news has come out from Nazar Kinsella. Now, Nazar Kinsella is a journalist that I'm not familiar with, a journalist that I've not really heard their name go out much lately, but in the last month or two, they've been writing a few reports on Manchester United, then a few days later, it gets confirmed by other journalists. So I don't know if they've got some kind of connection to Ratcliffe or INEOS or something, but they were the one that wrote the Elise story, and then Rob Dawson, Samuel Luckhurst, and every other United journalist the next 2 days was saying that we're interested in Elise. He was the guy to say that INEOS are interested in Elise. He's the guy that's made it very clear what INEOS want to do. And I think the fact that Fabrizio Romano has come out today, and we'll cover this near the end of the show, come out today and said Man United are looking at players that have been here 2 seasons now and not cut it. They will get rid of them. They've got 2 seasons to prove themselves, hinting at Sancho, hinting at Antony's future as well. I think, for a journalist that is not too familiar with, he seems to be quite accurate with information surrounding INEOS, because everything he sort of said in the last month has then been confirmed by other sources. He seems to be quite accurate with that, and maybe he's got some kind of connection to INEOS. Obviously, I think INEOS's plans are still a little bit up in the air. in the sense of I don't think INEOS 100% have a plan sort out, because they're going to assess how Ten Hag does from now till the end of the season. They'll be playing, and I don't think we'll know officially what they want to do come end of the season. But what we do know is they will clear out a lot of players. They do want to sell a lot of players. And it's been reported that Sancho and Antony have been offered to clubs in the Saudi Pro League, and United want 50 million for both. So United are offering Sancho and Antony to the Saudi Pro League. There's a feeling that Sancho won't go, but him being at Dortmund will raise his value and he'll go to a European club. But with Antony's possession of Ronaldo, there's a feeling that Antony could go to the Saudi Pro League for 40 to 50 million pounds. Now, I think what's very notable is that INEOS have just come in and said that Antony's had 2 seasons to prove himself. Sancho can't even play for the club. Get them out. Adios. Man United making it clear they're going to the Saudi Pro League. These guys are up for sale. You see what Newcastle have done this transfer window? They've basically said Callum Wilson, Kieran Trippier, Almiron, we'll let them go if the right bids come in. Newcastle might be getting 25 million for Almiron from the Saudi club. Obviously, they've got a bit of connection from Saudi Arabia. And I think United have thought, you know what, let's make it clear Sancho and Antony are for sale. Now, I don't think Man United would be lucky to get 50 million. I think Man United would be lucky to get 50 million for Sancho and Antony. I think they'd be really lucky to try and get 50 million for Sancho and Antony, but I think it's possible. I think it's possible because Saudi clubs opt to overpay. I think Antony, you might get 30 million max. I'm sorry, I hate to break it to United, but he's been poor. I think if Sancho does well at Dortmund, you could get 50 million, because the reason I say you could get 50 million for Sancho is the fact that Arsenal paid 65 million for Kai Havertz. Kai Havertz and Sancho are almost like the same player in the sense of they were both 2 young Bundesliga stars that were both as good as each other. They both had big sort of £70 million moves at their clubs. Were at their clubs 3 seasons. Chelsea managed to get 65 million for Havertz. Jadon Sancho was in that same ceiling as Havertz in the Bundesliga. Maybe you can get 50 million for Jadon Sancho. But from what I've heard and someone I've spoken to, and I've told you this guys before, I've been told that there is not a chance that Sancho will ever go to Saudi Arabia. There's things I know, there's things I've heard. Sancho was not going to Saudi Arabia. So as much as United would like Sancho to go to Saudi Arabia, I know he'll never go. You could throw ridiculous money at Sancho. I know he'll never go to Saudi Arabia. It's been very clear he wants to stay in Europe, revive his career, maybe stay at Borussia Dortmund if things work out. There's a feeling of Ten Hag that he'd love to revive at United, but I think it's past that point. Antony, on the other hand, he might go to Saudi Arabia. Now, I think ultimately Antony likes being at Manchester United or want to be in one of the main top 5 leagues. But with him not in the plans, and then he also make it clear, like, you ain't going to play many more minutes if you stay at United, I think he could be on the way out. Now, it was also said in regards to Manchester United moves announced that Manchester United hope Jadon Sancho's transfer to Borussia Dortmund on loan will recover some of his value and attract further interest ahead of the summer. I think even though there's reports that Ten Hag's future might not be safe and all of this and all of that, it seems pretty much like it's going to be basically Jadon Sancho, you're going to leave even as Ten Hag sats. You're at Dortmund. Hopefully you do well. Hopefully your value goes up and we can get a bit of money for you. And interestingly, it was said that Casemiro is the player most wanted by Saudi clubs, and Man United are inclined to sell the midfielder for the right price. So we've even got information coming out on Casemiro going to Saudi Arabia. Chelsea scammed Arsenal. I tell you what you want about Chelsea ownership, but they got 55 million for Mason Mount with 1 year left on his contract that's played 3 games for us in the Premier League because he's been injured. They got 65 million for Kai Havertz and they got nearly 40 million for Kovacic. All 3 players have been absolutely crap. Now, Mason Mount's not really his fault because he's been injured. But Chelsea basically got 160 million for Mount, Havertz, Kovacic, and then sold their deadwood to Saudi Arabia for another couple hundred million, for over 100 million. I tell you what, it can be done. People will be sitting there thinking, you can't get 50 million for Sancho. You can't get 50 million for Antony. There's no way. Look how much money Chelsea got for their crap players when they sold them, because they, as bad as Chelsea is run, at least they actually aren't as incompetent as Man United. You see Chelsea selling Lewis Hall to Newcastle for 35 million. He played 8 games at 18. And Man United sells Sedan Iqbal for under $1 million, Ted Mengi for under $1 million, who's now wanted by Crystal Palace and Fulham, willing to pay 25 million for him 6 months later. I mean, you look at the incompetence of Man United selling, and I think 50 million for Sancho and 50 million for Antony. If we get 100 million for Sancho and Antony, considering we spent 160 million on them, I'll bloody take that. I'll take the 100 million for the both of them. But it's possible. Because you've got Omar Barada coming in, you've got potentially Dan Ashworth coming in. All of a sudden, those kind of deals, those kind of businesses, getting 50 million for Antony from Saudi, it seems pretty impossible. But look at the money Chelsea got. Look at the money Chelsea got for Havertz. If Man United have proper people in there, they might be able to get 40 plus million for Antony, which I'd take 25, 30 million from him at this point. I'd take 25, 30 million for Sancho at this point. I'd just say, get them out, adios, bish, bash, bosh. But INEOS are serious, and they could get some serious money for those players. I do want to dive into a few stories as well. United can't sell Deadwood because of high wages, but a lot of Chelsea's players were on high wages as well. Although Man United were willing to give Mason Mount ridiculously high wages as well. So, and Arsenal were willing to give Havertz his wages, and City were willing to give Kovacic his wages. So I guess that kind of makes a difference. But it is mad as well. Those people incoming can't make anyone unsee Antony playing. I feel mean ganging on Antony, but he is so painful to watch. He works hard. I actually thought he showed glimpses last season of potential, of quality, but this season he's just been so bad to watch. And I think he's had issues going on in the background. We aren't just playing well in general, and the attack isn't doing well in general, but it's just so one-footed. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. And I think right now, as INEOS plan, they say this is your second season. You haven't done enough. Adios. And adios to Antony it will be as well. Most Chelsea players have cheaper wages, so it's easier to sell. United aren't proper because of wages. I mean, yeah, the wages at United are ridiculous. 300 grand a week. Sancho, 350 grand a week. Varane, 300 grand a week. Casemiro. I mean, some of those, we've got too many players and too much money. Marcus Rashford, since he signed his new contract, has gone down significantly. You do sometimes wonder, well, is there a coincidence between Rashford signing a new contract and his form going down massively as well? There's all reports coming out that United are reportedly going to let Casemiro leave as well. We will dive into that later on in the show. We will discuss information on Casemiro leaving United and United open to the sale of Casemiro. Lots of interesting news coming out. There was rumours of INEOS looking at Ange Postecoglou as well doing the rounds, but as I said, that's not come out from anyone of reliable sources. Now, I'm going to talk about a few other bits of information that have come out, just round up a little bit more news. This is less relevant news, and then we're going to get into the big and interesting stories. We're going to get into the Fabrizio Romano update. But it was said Manchester United have rejected a swap deal from Inter Milan of Denzel Dumfries for Wan-Bissaka. Apparently, we've rejected a swap deal from Inter for Denzel Dumfries for Wan-Bissaka. Again, not the most reliable source, and nothing's come out when anyone reliable. Take that one with a pinch of salt. I don't think we have, but I like Wan-Bissaka. Denzel Dumfries is okay. But I would think that Ten Hag would have said yes to that, so I don't think that is true. It was said that Dan Gore is expected to complete his move to Port Vale on loan today. Hopefully Dan Gore does really well on loan, smashes it. I think he's one of the most talented players to come out of the academy. I think he could do a bit better than Port Vale, but at least this way it ensures he gets game time. And then it was also said that Facundo Pelistri's loan move to Granada has stalled after Spanish clubs were only offering to make a small contribution to his salary. Talks are ongoing and other clubs are interested as well, which, to be honest, I think Pelistri needs to go out on loan for his own career. If I'm United, don't keep him here if you're not going to play him, particularly with Ahmad going back. But if Granada is saying, yeah, we're only going to pay a tiny bit of his wages, when there's about 4 or 5 other clubs interested in getting Pelistri on loan, well, yeah, we'll just get someone to pay more of his wages. Granada are trying to take advantage of Man United here, and we're not desperate to get rid of Pelistri. It'd just be good for him. I think a nice loan move to a Spanish club would be good for him, but we're not going to let anyone mug us off and say, yeah, we'll pay 10% of his wages when we know that they could easily pay 60, 70% of his wages, because I think Pelistri is only on like 10 grand a week, which is still a load of money, but he's not on something ridiculous, is he? Unless we've given him a ridiculous contract, because that is something that Manchester United like to do. Now, talking of ridiculous, we have been linked to another Ajax player here. We will dive into the news about Casemiro leaving. We will dive into the news about Varane leaving in just a second. Guys, please do hit that like button if you have not already. And of course, subscribe down below if you're new. The Casemiro sale would be baffling. Plenty of Deadwood to get rid of first, and then 100% fees, and then get rid of those wages. 100%. Casemiro and Varane, I'd sell them in 2025. The players I want gone in 2024 is the McTominays, the Lindelofs, the Donny van de Beeks, the Martials, the Sanchos, the Antonys. That's for me who needs to go in 2024. So who has been linked to Manchester United? Eric Ten Hag is still interested in Brian Brobby, and even though he would like to make additions to his squad in January, he's been told that finances, particularly for permanent deals, remain tight, and Man United are open to making signings this month if an opportunity presents himself, said Rob Dawson. Fabrizio Romano said on transfers that Todibo will be a name for United in the summer. He's approved by Ten Hag in the scouting department. Obviously, things can change with Omar Barada coming in, Dan Ashworth potentially coming in, Paul Mitchell potentially coming in, and all the changes at United. The targets can change, but we know that Jared Branthwaite, Todibo and Antonio Silva, 3 centre-back targets that have been approved by Ten Hag and the scouting department. We'll wait and see what Omar Barada and Dan Ashworth said. It was also said by Romano, I think De Ligt could be on the move. There could be many clubs in the race. Let's wait for Man United to appoint a director of football to see who they decide to go with. Personally, I think De Ligt's overrated. I think out of all the right centre-backs available, we can do a lot better. But I know Ten Hag knows the player, but I'd assume that if we get Omar Barada or someone coming in, they're not going to say yes to De Ligt. I feel like it's a very FIFA move. I know this sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's something that someone with basic ball knowledge would do. They say, De Ligt, he was at Ajax, he's played for Juventus, he played for Bayern, he had, 90 potential on FIFA, he must be better than Todibo, let's go sign De Ligt. When actually De Ligt's not been very convincing since he's left Ajax. He's been okay, but I don't think he was great at Juventus. I don't think he was particularly great at Bayern Munich. He's not been very great since he's left Ajax. So I do look at it from that angle as well. Casemiro needs to stay. I mean, I'm open to selling Casemiro if we get a big offer for him, but only if we get rid of the likes of McTominay first and have a good replacement lined up. For me, McTominay needs to go first, then we can assess selling Casemiro, but we have to have a replacement that's ready and someone that can play DM next to Meno. And I don't think Amadou Onana is a Casemiro replacement. I think that he can improve the squad, but a Tchouaméni is what I see as a Casemiro replacement, which is very, very unlikely. I tell you what United should do, actually, and maybe this is just an unpopular opinion of mine, but Camavinga is an absolutely fantastic player, but because they've got Valverde, Tchouaméni, Kroos, Modric, Bellingham, Camavinga doesn't get that many minutes at Real Madrid. And I don't think he'll leave Real Madrid for United, but if I'm Manchester United, I sway around there, I say, look, Camavinga ain't getting a whole load of minutes at Real Madrid. If I'm INEOS, I go, this is a banging player. He's still young. He almost came to us in the past, but did choose Real Madrid over us, which is fair enough. Probably better for him. But if I'm United right now, I say, let's go. Let's go in for Camavinga, hey? I generally would. Don't think United would do that as well. We need a massive clear out, 100%. Pellistri would rather loan in English football. Yeah. I think Brentford would be a good loan for Pellistri, but they don't seem particularly interested. We need 2 centre-backs, a right-back, a centre-mid, a right-winger and a striker. I agree. You could argue we need 2 midfielders, one that's more attacking-minded and one that's more defensive-minded, because we could lose McTominay, Amrabat and Casemiro. So even with Meno coming through, he would replace maybe McTominay, but we'd need maybe a long-term Amrabat and Casemiro replacement, if you get what I'm saying, because we never really replaced Fred. We need maybe an energetic midfielder that can cover a lot of ground like Amadou Onana, but then we might need an actual 6-6. And then next summer, I'd look in 2025 at getting someone like João Neves in. I think João Neves is a baller, but I think we can wait a year for him. And I think, to be honest, we need to improve the balance of midfield, because I think Bruno Fernandes is such a brilliant player and United don't get the best out of him. Martial's walking away for free in the summer. Antony is going way for cheap. So much bad business in Deadwood. Will ex-City CEO bring better business? Well, I think ex-City CEO will let Martial leave for free, because that's 250k a week's wages saved. That is about 13 million a year in wages saved by letting Martial go. You save about 13 million next year. I think he'll let Antony go. Could get 40 million for Antony, could get 40 million for Sancho. Just offloading Antony, Sancho and Anthony Martial could save Manchester United about £100 million, and that could be invested in Sesko, £40 million release clause. Elise, he's now got a 60 million release clause. Bish bash bosh. You've got a young striker, you've got a young right winger in, or you could go Nico Williams, 48 million release clause, and Sesko, 40 million release clause, and you've spent the money you got from releasing Martial, selling Sancho, and selling Antony, and you think that really, including the wages, you save 110 million there, and then you go and invest 80 million in Benjamin Sesko release clause and Nico Williams release clause, and maybe that's something that INEOS will look to do, and I think that could be smart business as well. Maguire and Sports wages combined equal Casemiro's wages, get 45 to 60 million fee as well. Exactly. If we look at it, if we did sell Maguire and Scott, their wages combined is Casemiro's wages, but you'd at least get the 40, 50, 60 million on top of that as well for selling those two, which is something that we missed out massively on in the summer. I think, the frustration is Ten Hag really wanted Kim Min-jae. He obviously went early to Bayern Munich because United weren't going to be able to get him. We absolutely fumbled that because we didn't know if we were going to sell a centre-back, and when we thought we were going to sell Maguire, we were going to bring in Todibo, but we didn't sell Maguire, and that's a big miss. I think, although Maguire's been good this season, if we'd have sold Maguire and McTominay, that could have been... Gravenberch's been all right for Liverpool, to be honest, but he's not been amazing, but, we'd be in a much better position if we had Kim Min-jae and Gravenberch right now at the club than McTominay and Maguire. I mean, I think Maguire was good when he played, but Kim Min-jae has been phenomenal, and this, again, is why I don't want De Ligt. He's just a Kim Min-jae reject. in the sense of Kim Min-jae's come in, De Ligt can't get in the team because he ain't as good as Kim Min-jae, who they got for 40 million, who we could have got. If we didn't spend all that money on Antony, if we didn't piss about so much, we could have got Kim Min-jae for 40 million. And what a player he is, what a defender he is. Completely frustrates me as well. Robbie must be paper talk because we don't have the money. Yeah, I think it is a bit paper talk. He even spoke out saying he'd heard nothing of these rumours. I think just him being linked to us in the past and Ten Hag liking him is the obvious reasons behind that. I've said now and I'll say it again, if Manchester United bring anyone in January, it'll be Choupo-Moting on loan or it'd be Rafa of Benfica on loan. They're the two players that we've actually looked at and discussed internally from what I've heard as well. There was something I heard about a right winger. I got a source who told me something about a right winger whose name was really unfamiliar. It was a right winger in La Liga that was really young. I think he was at Betis. Real Betis right winger, and there might be a story breaking on him in a few days. There might be a story breaking on a winger from Real Betis whose name I've completely forgot. I've not heard of him. Man United may be looking at. But I got some interesting info on that I can't really release because it's all sort of up in the air and needs to be confirmed. But that could potentially be a name to watch, but it wasn't anyone spectacular that really stood out for me as well. De Ligt not particularly mobile and hasn't really settled anywhere since Ajax. Exactly, I'd avoid De Ligt. We need Todibo, Branthwaite, Barella, Elise and Vlahovic. I'd swap Vlahovic for maybe someone like Benjamin Sesko, activate his release clause, because I actually don't think Vlahovic suits Ten Hag ball. Maybe that's just me, but again, I haven't actually watched Vlahovic play this season. I'm just going off last season where he dropped off a bit. Casemiro is still ahead of Maino, and I don't want to play two DMs. Yeah, I think Kobbie Mainoo is the future, but if we do sell Casemiro, we're going to have to bring in an experienced DM because you can't rely on Kobbie Mainoo to just be the six the whole of next season, no matter how good it's been as well. Amrabat was a poor deal, which was a shame. Amrabat was a poor deal, but I also think Amrabat came injured, had to play out of position, hasn't really had a run of games here and there. And the way that Ten Hag sets up the midfield, it makes it so impossible for anyone to do their job there, whether it's Casemiro, whether it's Mainoo, whether it's Amrabat. It's to do with the structural setup of United. It's to do with Amrabat being played out of position. It's to do with Amrabat maybe not getting to full fitness because he hadn't had a run of games and his injury. I actually think had Amrabat gone to Liverpool, he'd been good. Generally, I think had Amrabat gone to Liverpool, he'd been good because their midfield is stable, it's sorted, their structure sorted. I think that actually a lot of the Amrabat move, Amrabat hasn't been good enough, but I think a lot of it is on actually Manchester United and how we run and how we operate as well. Marshall end up retiring. Nobody will sign him unless you pay you as a play deal. Potentially, but he's not really been injured this season, although he does need a surgery. I think Marshall will be fine in like Turkey. I think he'll just go move to Turkey. He won't get a big move, but I think he'll go to Turkey and he'll be fine because there's still a decent player in Marshall as well. I don't think he's a bad player, but he's just injury prone and frustrating as well. I don't think Mount will work. Hate to be negative, but don't know where he fits in. I don't really know where Mount fits in when we signed him. I guess he's sort of an Eriksen replacement, but then Ten Hag was playing Eriksen over Mason Mount. I kind of got to an extent when we signed Mason Mount because it's like, yeah, Eriksen isn't getting any younger and Eriksen can't cover the ground needed out of possession and Mason Mount can do that. But I think we needed someone that could play deeper than Mason Mount. Mason Mount is a 10/8, which I think we should have got this summer. I think last summer we should have got a 6/8, which could have been a Caicedo type player, could have been an Edson Alvarez of Ajax. We should have got a 6/8 this summer and then a 10/8 next summer. If I was Man United, I wouldn't have wasted 60 million on Mason Mount. I would have gone for Mason Mount on a free this summer as a sort of an 8/10, and I would have gone all out for Declan Rice. I would have gone all out for Declan Rice if I was Manchester United last summer. And I said that last summer, Declan Rice or Caicedo, I would have really tried to get one of those deals done. And then I would have gone for Mason Mount on a free the next summer because I think that 6/8 was more of a priority in last summer than an 8/10. 100%. We need Sesko. 40 million release clauses being reported. I think those two strikers would set us up nicely for the future. I guess I understand why we might want an experienced striker coming in next to Højlund rather than two young strikers, but two great strikers. Shaw needs to stay. Shaw is staying at Manchester United as well. Honestly, playing two DMs against a high-pressing team is the way for now because the way the opponent runs through our midfield is embarrassing, and I completely agree. We need to improve the structure of our midfield massively as well. Maguire was okay, though we were playing incredibly negative. There's no future for him. I think if we want to play high-line positive football, he may struggle, but I do think that Maguire, for the most part, has been good this season. But I think if we want to progress, that's the name of the guy. That's the name of the guy, Diao, whatever. I probably said his name wrong. Just keep an eye on that name. That's all I'm saying. Keep an eye on that name. Probably not much in it because INEOS have already come in and they haven't discussed targets, but do keep an eye on that name as well. I mean, isn't Sesko struggling a bit in the Bundesliga? We should look at Gimenez in the Eredivisie as well. I tell you what, if I was to sign an Eredivisie player, it would be Gimenez. Jimenez has been very good in the Eredivisie, and I'm surprised we've not been linked to him because he's an Eredivisie player. I know a lot of Chelsea fans want him. But let's actually dive into the news because I've just realized I'm 24 minutes into the video and I've basically not even got through like half the news I need to get into. So don't want this video to drag, or this live stream to drag. But it was said Manchester United continue to be linked with a move for Bayern Munich striker Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, but talks still to take place over a late loan, says Simon Jones. I think if we do anything this window, it's Choupo-Moting. I think that will be really it. And we're looking at Rafa of Benfica. I mean, look, I'd love Man United to see if they could do something for Gonzalo Ramos, 6 months on loan. I'd love that, but that seems too smart for United. However, we'll get some interesting info coming in on the takeover. And apparently, even though Omar Berradi hasn't started work at Manchester United, even though nothing is done in terms of Omar Berradi starting... Berradi? Why am I saying his name wrong? Forgot his name there. Omar Berradi starting work at United. Apparently, he has to say and have an influence on potential deals we do. So hopefully he's got a smart brain thinking, why don't we see if we can get that Gonzalo Ramos guy? I mean, that would be brilliant as well. Mount is a good squad player and placement for Bruno. I think Mount is an upgrade on Eriksen, but Ten Hag was playing Eriksen and leaving Mount on the bench when Mount was fit. That was the questionable thing as well. Liverpool play 4-3-3. We play stupid 4-1-1-3-1 in ridiculous system. Bruno basically in 3-1. We're not getting the best out of Bruno. Bruno Fernandes is such an incredible player, and a lot of Man United fans don't rate him, but Bruno Fernandes is such an incredible player, and Man United don't get the best out of him as well. Bakayoko has impressed me a lot for his potential right-wing options. His skill set looks good. Yeah, Bakayoko kind of reminds me of the right-wing version of Doku, very direct winger. I think him, Elise, Sule, and Nico Williams are my 4 standout right-wing options, 100%. I think if we lose Sancho and Antony, we should go for 2 right-wingers, but I don't think that will happen as well. Kolo Muani, I don't particularly rate Kolo Muani to be 100% honest with you. I like Victor Boniface. I like Gonzalo Ramos, who hasn't had a great season. But I think with United, they might want a bit more of an experienced striker to come in and help Hoyland. But let's get into the Dan Ashworth news because there's some big stories coming out. So these were the initial stories, and then I want to get into some big statements made by Romano. It was said by Pete Hall, Dan Ashworth is INEOS' top choice for Manchester United sporting director role, and Paul Mitchell is top choice for head of recruitment. It was said by Romano on the United Stan YouTube channel today. He said Manchester United and INEOS are working hard to bring Dan Ashworth to the club. Manchester United and INEOS want Dan Ashworth to be the face of the new project, and Manchester United and INEOS are working hard to find a way to bring Dan Ashworth to the club. They're really pushing. So this was said by Fabrizio Romano on the United Stan YouTube channel that Manchester United are really, really pushing behind the scenes to get Dan Ashworth in. Now, Dan Ashworth is a very difficult deal to do because Dan Ashworth is at Newcastle United. They're the richest club. They've got one of the most ambitious projects in football, and it's going to take a lot to lure Dan Ashworth to come to United. It's also going to take a lot to get him because there's no way that Newcastle are going to want to let him go to rivals. So Man United are working incredibly hard behind the scenes to, one, convince Dan Ashworth to ditch the Newcastle Saudi project where he's got the reins to do almost anything he wants and come to United and work under the INEOS project, which I think bringing in Omar Berradi will give us another bit of confidence in saying, look, if Omar Berradi left City for us, you know we're serious, you come to United. But Romano is saying that United are working incredibly hard on this deal. United are doing what they can to try and make this deal happen. And it's looking more and more likely that something can happen and something will happen for Dan Ashworth. Ornstein, Romano, top sources have said, look, United are pushing incredibly hard behind the scenes for this to happen. Sky Sports have said, guys, just breaking news coming out here, before he officially begins his role, and they're talking about the new United CEO, they've said Omar Berradi will be kept informed about every recruitment position within the administration at Manchester United that INEOS will be making. And Rio Ferdinand said that he spoke to some guys at Man City and they can't believe that we've gone and got him. And this is in regards to Omar Berradi. They think like, wow, he's done so much in the game at different levels. He's been so successful for them. And apparently those at Man City can't believe that we've managed to go and get him. And those at Man City are not happy that Man United have gone out there and got Omar Berradi. But I think those at Newcastle will be even more annoyed if we can get that Dan Ashworth deal over the line. That would be mad. There's a chance that we could end up with both Mitchell and Ashworth. Yeah, it's get the CEO in, get the director of football in, get them to align visions, and then they might go for a Paul Mitchell, who is out of work, that's moved back to the area, that would love to work at United as well. Alex said I'd sort Mitchell first and then work on Ashworth later, as he could be difficult and complicated. 100%, but I think that's why they're working on Ashworth now, because they know it's a more difficult and more complicated deal to do. I think that could be why they're working on it now as well. Mitchell, I think Mitchell is essentially done. There are links about Paul Mitchell going to Roma, but he left Monaco because he wanted to go back to England and be closer with his family. So I don't think he would go to Roma, particularly if he knows that Man United are going to come in for him. Why would he rush a move to Roma? He's in no rush. Bigger teams, better teams will go in for him. Bigger teams, better teams will want him. And that, no offense to Roma, but that is the case. I think Paul Mitchell is very open to the United job. But let me actually dive into some of the main stories I wanted to discuss. Some of the main stories I wanted to dive into, people. This was particularly interesting, and this is what Fabrizio Romano said on INEOS. Fabrizio Romano went on the United stand and he was asked about INEOS and Omar Barada and this appointment and what it might mean. And he said this: Omar Barada knows how to create something special. His modern vision is so important for Man United. He already has the experience. He was crucial to the Manchester City board. He will help with the vision for present and future. Omar Barada was an important figure to City, he said. He said, Barada, Man United and INEOS will meet Ten Hag, but he's 100% involved. So he spoke about Omar Barada and how important he was to the vision and success of the Manchester City board and how important he's going to be for Man United. And this is what Fabrizio Romano said. But more importantly, and I think this is big, this is what Fabrizio Romano had to say on the Omar Barada appointment. He said, Barada knows that you have to perform. Otherwise, in 1 to 2 years, you have to leave the club. Players who stay at Man United for 3 to 4 years and never leave the club is something unacceptable that won't happen with the new board. That is something that I've been wanting to hear for a while. That is something we need to hear, and that is something that I think massively links in with those Antony and Sancho stories. This statement from Fabrizio Romano, I think this is massive. This is massive. He is basically saying, and this is Fabrizio Romano basically saying, Man United aren't, if you don't cut it within 1 to 2 seasons of joining the club, you're out. And look at Antony. This is his second season. He's not cut it. All of a sudden, INEOS are going and telling the world, yeah, look, Antony's up for sale. INEOS are going telling the world, look, Sancho's up for sale. Antony, Sancho, you've had 2 years. You've had your chances. You're out. We're not giving you 3-4 years. Every single failed signing at Man United, bar 1 or 2, has had 3-4 years or run out their contract and then they've completely lost value. Every single failed signing gets too long because, we spent so much money on this guy, we can't ship him out. It doesn't matter. If they've got 2 years to deliver, and if they don't, they don't. Look at Calvin Phillips. Last season was his first season at City. He was crap. He was injured. This season, he's been crap. Calvin Phillips will leave Manchester City this summer, could even leave in January. Manchester City aren't going to say, let's give Calvin Phillips 4 years. No, he's gone. He's absolutely gone. The players that go to Man City that aren't good enough, adios, they are gone. Man United, they get 4 years, 4 or 5 years here. Victor Lindelof is not bad, but he ain't good enough to win a title with if you want if he's playing centre back. But he's still here. We might be giving him a new contract. Anthony Martial's been here 7 years. Manchester United need to stop. Eric Bailly barely played and got a new contract. Phil Jones got a new contract for absolutely no reason. Manchester United need to stop this. You've got 2 years. You're either good enough or you're not. Adios if you don't prove it in your second season. Adios. This is Manchester United. You don't get 3 seasons to warm up. First season, we'll give you time. Second season, you deliver or you're out. We'll go replace you. We'll go buy someone else. We'll buy someone better. Because we aren't a charity. We aren't, we'll give you time. We are Manchester United. We're here to compete. We're here to be serious. We're not here to be the banter club that we have been the last few years. Romano said, the new board will not allow non-performing players to stay at the club for several years. Omar Barada feels that players have to perform or leave the club within 1 to 2 years. Omar Barada, within days of being appointed, has said, Antony out, Sancho out, like that. Big signings, big names, out, he says. Not giving them any more time. They didn't perform, they got to go. We ain't giving them 3-4 years. We're not giving Antony a 3rd season. He's not good enough. I don't care. Let's sell. Let's get rid. Because we've got too many players at Manchester United that are not good enough to play for this club, but have been at this club far too long. They've had far too much time. And we need to get rid of them. We need to sell them. And we don't. We just wander around, do what we do, faff around, be classic old Manchester United as well. Might the supposed enforced FFP sales at Newcastle tempt Ashworth to leave? Potentially, but I think Ashworth is capable of the challenge and knows it will just fix itself out in a year. Does INEOS have good intentions for a club? I think a few years the Glazers will sell their shares. Will INEOS buy out shares in small pieces? I think INEOS's intentions are good. I think Ratcliffe generally wants to make United successful again because he doesn't need to take dividends out of United to survive. He can do that with INEOS. INEOS makes so much more money than United. It's just that I think Ratcliffe's pure desperation to buy the club and enable the Glazers to stay to buy the club, that is the big red flag, because even though Ratcliffe's intentions are good, it's the fact that the Glazers are still here. The Glazers are still in charge. They're still in charge of finances. Ratcliffe will want to make these major changes. Ratcliffe may want to make some January investment next January if we're in a bit of trouble, but will the Glazers allow him to do that? That's the big question. And I think the fact that Omar Barada said yes to United, and the fact that they might be able to tempt Dan Ashworth, and I think if they bring in Dan Ashworth and that deal gets done like it said it's going to be done, that's a massive statement, because Dan Ashworth rejected United in the past. Omar Barada would not come to United if he didn't think he was going to be given the control, the freedoms and reins to make changes at the club. I think the fact that Omar Barada and potentially Dan Ashworth are coming into United says these guys think they're going to get the freedom to make changes at the club and make the club good again and make the power good again. And I do think that INEOS's actual intentions are very positive, are very good as well. Omar was wanted by a lot of teams, even outside of football. NFL franchises wanted him as well. Everyone was cronking out at Arsenal until they got Edu, proper football director, and hopefully Sir Jim and Co can make a big difference. Exactly. I was very clear I wanted the full sale. It wasn't about me being anti-Ratcliffe. It was just me being like, Qatar's the full sale. Ratcliffe enables the Glazers to stay. So I made it very clear that I wanted Qatar over Ratcliffe to begin with, because that was the full sale and that was the most important thing. But I know that if Ratcliffe comes in with the right intentions and eventually buys out the Glazers, we can be just as well off as if Qatar had come in the long term, because as long as the people running Man United put the heart at the club and put a proper structure in place and a proper vision in place and have footballing people running the club, we can be very successful. We're not Newcastle. We don't need Saudi money to be at the top of the game, because we're such a big club commercially that we will generate the most money. And if we're playing well on the pitch, we will still continue to generate the most money, even more and more and more than others. And it's just all Man United need is someone who has the freedom and control to run the club properly and put footballing success at the heart of this club, which is something the Glazers haven't done. And this is something that Jim Ratcliffe's PR is saying he will do, and hopefully he will do. The just question mark is it's not a full sale. Even if Ratcliffe's intentions are good, we've still got the Glazers here lingering around. They still have to have a say about who the new CEO is. That does worry me. They're still going to stop you buying someone in January if you want to buy someone in January. And I don't actually have a bad feeling about Jim or what Jim's intentions are. I just think the only negative is knowing actually that the Glazers still have some level of control as well. Too many deadwood players at United, I agree. Newcastle have less spending power than we do. Revenue of 250 million versus our 650 million. FFP means you can only spend what you earn. Man United's on a different planet to Newcastle, yeah. But the reason Manchester United, even though they generate so much more money than Newcastle, are in an FFP situation a bit like Newcastle, is because 30 million of that is going on paying the Rain Group. But, you know, if the Glazers weren't in debt and the Glazers cleared our debt and we didn't have all those outstanding payments and all those debts, Man United wouldn't be in an FFP situation, because we've got 300 million in outstanding payments, 30 million covering the Glazers' dividends, and then we've got all that extra money that is covering, you know, the Glazers' debt and the interest. That means that even though United generates 650 million, they're in a bad FFP situation, even though they've got, if you look at how much they've spent and how much they've generated, you think, FFP doesn't bother us. You know, it's the interest repayments. It's all the stupid thing the Glazers have done, like paying Sancho over 5 years, paying Antony over 5 years, that is catching up on us. That's why we got trouble with FFP, because the mismanagement of this club from those at the top, yet again as well. It's crazy. You look at certain flops have been here longer than some of United greats and recent memories. I know. That's when you know the club's a mess, when we've had great players and some flops have outstayed them. I think Martial's been at this club longer than Ronaldo was now. Like that's madness to me as well. With Breda and Blanc, we'll see that wage bill coming down 100%. Breda was important in managing wages at City. Blanc got the wage bill down at Juventus when he worked there. Two people with reputations of balancing and getting a good, established, comfortable wage bill as well. Alex B said this: we have to be smarter with the wages. The wages are the biggest issues in selling players, 100%. And hopefully with Blanc and Barada coming in, that should be sorted as well. Alice, if INEOS failed to bring in Danny Boy, who do you want to go for? Big Ralph Rag? I don't think Ralph Ranić would work just because of what happened last time. I don't know. I'd like Paul Mitchell. We've obviously been linked to the Crystal Palace and, of course, the Atletico Madrid sporting director. I would try and get Man City's director of football, but I don't think that's going to work, to be honest. Glazers still own 75%. They actually own 58%, I believe, now, because Jim Ratcliffe bought 25% of shares, and I think 12% were Glazers, 13% were Class A shares, and they had 69%. So I think they got 57% of the club, but I get what you mean by saying 75. But they own 57% of the club, and they're still majority shareholders as well. The Glazers don't have the money to run this club, hence they don't have the money to redevelop Old Trafford, the new training ground. And I think that's why the Glazers have taken a step back and think, you know what, we're just going to let Jim run the club, do what he wants to do, because we need to start making money again as a club. We need to start being good again on the pitch if we want to milk more money out of this club. So let's actually give Jim some freedom to do the work that he needs to do. I think that's why the Glazers have taken a step back and given Jim this much control, is because they've realised that actually, let's just get Jim to run the club now, because we've run the club so badly. We've run the club into the ground. Let's get bloody Jim to run the club, because we're going to mess it up again. I think the Glazers have realised they can't run a football club. Let's get someone else to run the football club, and we can reap the rewards if they make this football club good again and take more money out of the club. I think that's how the Glazers see everything at United as well. Absolutely everything. Question, Alice. Why is the fact that Man United have to pay 30 million of transfer budget to Rain Group not mentioned in media? Because Glazers feed a lot of what comes out to the media and probably try to stop that info coming out. We aren't, us fan channels, and a lot of mainstream media give fan channels stick, but fan channels just report on what mainstream media say and give their opinion, and fan channels will have their bit of own information here and there. Mainstream media get briefed by United, they'll do PR, they'll do leaks for United, they'll work for United, and they'll just say what Man United want them to say, whereas we'll call it out. We'll call stuff out, we'll say this is Glazer PR. The reason they ain't reporting much about the 30 million that the Glazers used to pay the Rain Group is because the Glazers probably don't want them to. We'll bring light to that as fan channels. We did. I made a video on it, but mainstream media won't, because, Man United pay their wages. They've got to be friendly with the Glazers. That's what they've got to do. We also have a new shirt sponsor in the summer, probably a world record deal. Could definitely be a world record deal as well. Look, 184 likes and 564 watching people. You're slacking here. Please do hit that like button. Let's see if we can hit 250 likes. If everyone hits that like button watching, we'll be on over 500 likes, which would be insane. So please do that. Alex said FFP tightening is a good thing. Mega rich takeover shouldn't get a shortcut to the top. Have to correct mistakes of the past. 100% agree. It's just a shame that Man City have found a way to cheat around it and will probably get away with it. But Newcastle got to be a lot more cautious than City. But I think FFP is a big thing. And let's actually hope that those that don't stick to the rules, not just Everton and Forest, are punished. The big clubs that don't stick to the rules should also be punished, like Everton and Forest. Man United actually had to pay a fine because they technically broke an FFP rule. It wasn't like Man City's 115 charges. We just handed a document in too late, and Man United made a big fuss about that, paid a fine, got on with it as well. The Glazers are individual owners, not a collective group. Legally, they might support each other, but also disagree with each other. Jim is the biggest stakeholder at the club now. I mean, you can actually see it like that, technically. You do make a solid point, but I think Abraham and Joe are the main people at the Glazer 6 as well. So they might have the biggest say. And Nigeria 2-0 against Guinea-Bissau and AFCON as well. Not really watched much of AFCON, but I feel like I should give it a go because there's some really talented players in there, particularly for Nigeria. They've got some great players. Their attack is absolutely balling. Only the Glazers benefited financially from the minority investment. They should pay their own legal fees. Shaking my head. 100%. The amount of money they get, ridiculous. But of course they're going to take that out of United. It's got Glazers written all over it. You know what they're like. In terms of Man United looking at centre forwards, Man United were looking at Marcus Leonardo that scored 2 goals in 2 games for Benfica. They were linked to Brian Brobbery, who could come in the summer as a cheap forward. They've been linked to Xerxes and they've been linked to Sesko. They've been linked to a lot of young players. I think United will try and bring in a striker that's going to cost less than 40 million in the summer. That is sort of the plan as well. Osasuna have released a statement. One sec. Let me just read this. I don't know if this is accurate. Interesting. Now, I'm not going to read that out, actually. I need to fact check that. There's some interesting information that's come out, but I don't know if it's true or not. So I'm not going to read that out because that seems like it could be made up. But if that is true, I'll make a video on that later. But I was just reading something there, some statement coming out of Spain as well. Miguel Almiron set to go to Saudi Arabia, so maybe Newcastle will make some moves going on later in the window as well. Diving into the chat people as well. Bill Kenwright sold Everton. He said he didn't have money to run the club with transfer fees, similar to the Glazers. Their demise will happen. We will see it. Yeah, Everton was run badly. The guy didn't have the money to run the club. Ultimately, at least Everton's owners kind of sold it, whereas our owners, unfortunately, won't sell the club because they're thinking, oh, well, actually, we're too stupid to run the club. We don't have the money to run the club, but this guy will allow us to stay at the club. He'll run the club. He'll invest our money. Hopefully, he'll run the club properly so the club's good again, and then we start generating more money, and then we could take more dividends out of the club and make even more money. It's probably what the Glazers are seeing from it. And in terms of a business perspective, it's probably the smartest move the Glazers have ever done. The Glazers aren't good businessmen. The Glazers have never been good at business. They've inherited their business. They've inherited their money. They got it all from Daddy Malcolm. And they've been crap at business. But from a business perspective, getting Jim Ratcliffe in to do all the hard work, make the club good again, potentially, so the club generates more money so they can take out future dividends when they're in a position where they'd run the club so badly they'd have to leave, is probably the smartest business decision that the Glazers have actually made. When you think about it, it just is, because it's smart for them, it's just absolutely horrible for us and an absolute joke for us. But from their perspective, it's actually quite smart for them for a change, because they don't really do anything smart, do they, as well? Apparently, Man United is set to let Casemiro leave. Shall we dive into this news about Casemiro leaving Manchester United? Reports coming out that INEOS is set to let Casemiro leave. Now, I'm going to tell you this now. Erik ten Hag does not want to sell Casemiro in the summer. Will Erik ten Hag be here in the summer? Will Erik ten Hag have the power to make that choice in the summer? That is the big question mark. Erik ten Hag, even though Casemiro has been injured this season, hasn't been great when he's played, doesn't want Casemiro gone in the summer. Casemiro isn't a priority to be sold. There's a lot of media reports saying that United want to sell Casemiro, but from what I know, it's not that United want to sell Casemiro, it's the fact that Man United have had a lot of clubs interested in Casemiro and they've struggled to sell in the past, and Casemiro might become one of Man United's most sellable assets. That is the information I have on Casemiro. It's not that he's in that top 5 list of players for Man United to sell this summer. It's the fact that there's lots of clubs expressing their interest in Casemiro. United are thinking, well, we need money because we need to invest in a younger squad. We will get 50 million. We'll get 40 million for Casemiro from Saudi Arabia. They've made that clear. That's a lot of wages saved that can be invested in someone younger. We're struggling to sell the Sanchos, the Antonys, the Maguires. We're struggling to sell them. The McTominays, the Martials will go for free. Casemiro might leave because, and this isn't a good thing, but it is a good thing at the same time, because I think he's old and I get why they sell him, but I think McTominay needs to go first, Antony needs to go first before we even look at Casemiro, because he's the most sellable asset. And that's what Chelsea did. Chelsea sold Mason Mount, Kai Havertz, because they were the most sellable assets at the club. You know, Chelsea had a lot of crap players, but they managed to sell the ones that were sellable. Mason Mount went because he was sellable. A lot of players won't. Conor Gallagher might go, even though he's been their best midfielder this season, because he's the most sellable. And I think from what I've heard, that's the situation with Casemiro. They want to get rid of Antony. They want to get rid of Sancho. They've got a list of Antony, Sancho, McTominay, Lindelof, Maguire, Donny, Martial. They're the players they want to go. And then the Casemiros and Varans are after that, because they know that clubs are interested in buying Casemiro and Varane will offer them money. No club has expressed an interest in buying Antony. That is what I've heard. And that's what I know so much on Casemiro. Decisions, again, as I've said, and I will state this, will be made in May. We won't know officially what the plan is to around May time. And Man United might then announce to clubs Casemiro's on the market if they desperately need money. Because INEOS want to do a lot. And I think Casemiro, I'd sell him in 2025. I'd personally keep him around for another season, because I think it's going to be hard to replace him. But if we can get a good offer for Casemiro and there's a young replacement there, and we're also going to get rid of the likes of McTominay, go for that younger refresh rebuild. But as I've said, I've made this clear. The McTominays, the Lindelofs, the Antonys, they need to be the first names out the doors. And then once they're out the door, you assess, okay, well, have we got good enough offers for Casemiro and Varane here? Could we cash in on them and invest on younger players? Because if Casemiro and Varane play for United next season, they're good enough to play for Man United next season. Lindelof isn't good enough to play for us next season. McTominay isn't good enough to play for us next season. Antony isn't good enough to play for us next season. That is the big difference to me between those players. And that's sort of the info that we've got on that as well. I'm going to dive down the live chat, people. It's a little bit laggy there, so I do apologize. I've missed a few live chats. As Daniel said, please do like, subscribe, and share. People putting in the chat Mason Mount is crap. Mason Mount was one of Chelsea's best players. I don't think Mason Mount's a bad player. I don't think he's even been bad when he's played. I think he's been injured, and I think it's too early to judge him. I didn't think we should sign Mason Mount. I didn't see why we were going all in for Mason Mount. I thought, well, is this really a position that United need? But I'm going to back Mason Mount as a good player there. I just don't think he was the right fit for United. Alex said I'd keep Casemiro for at least another season. He had one of the best seasons we've seen for us post-Alex Ferguson. I agree. Mount is a good squad player and replacement for Bruno. I don't think you can really replace Bruno, but rotation option as well. Getting rid of Antony could be an issue. It could be an issue. I think INEOS will make it clear that he's up for sale. And I think if you want to get rid of someone, you can. I think the wages are difficult, but you look at how Chelsea cleared out. I think that's what United will look to do, what INEOS will look to do, and hopefully we can do that as well. All didn't seem well. Eric Ten Hag and Casemiro. Eric Ten Hag was probably criticising him subbing about half-time before injury. That being said, and that sparked a few rumours, but from what I've heard, Ten Hag's a big fan of Casemiro and wants him here next season. The thing is, you just don't know who to believe. Like the media say one thing, I hear another thing, another source says another thing. Some sources said Casemiro and Eric Ten Hag are good. Some sources said they're bad. From what I've heard, they're good. From what reliable sources said they're good, but they could also be bad. No one knows. The media always changing their story about Manchester United, always changing their story as well. It'll be interesting to see. Onana's a big flop. Onana's been crap in AFCON. I thought Onana would be better than what he's been. I don't know what it is, but Onana's one of those that he have to go next season if he doesn't improve. 100% as well. The way that business are valued means losing money on Antony and Casemiro right now isn't a bad thing. It will improve the value curve and strengthen INEOS' position in 2 years' time. I think that's a solid point there by Antony. You've got to look at the business sides of things. Yeah, we might make a 50 million loss on Antony, but at the end of the day, if we can sell Antony and invest that into a Nico Williams, a Bakayoko, that puts us in a much better position, a younger player with potential that can at least take on their man as well. Maybe Eric Ten Hag came to his senses seeing how we've been about Casemiro potentially as well. I really hope that we see Casemiro, Mino, Bruno midfield free. We've got to be. I don't think they'll play versus Wigan. I think Ten Hag will save them for the Premier League game, which I think is our next Premier League game against Wolves. I think he'll save that for the Premier League game against Wolves because we don't have a game for 2 weeks and then we've got 2 games in 3 days. The ridiculous fixture list, the fixture planning. I have to say, I've been pretty miserable this January. I have to say, this is one of the most miserable months for me. 1, because Man United haven't been good. 2, because nothing's going on in the transfer window. But this January break's been horrible. It's just not been enough football on. Man United aren't doing anything, and it's so cold. I can't wait till January's over. January has been the worst month of the year, and it's the only month so far this year. I actually have been miserable this January. Content-wise, I've been struggling. I'm thinking, well, I've got to make 2 pieces of content a day, and some days I'm thinking, what am I going to talk about? What are we doing? Chip on motoring? Maybe. January's been rough, but that's nearly over and football's nearly back. I feel like if it was just a 2-week January break, that'd be fine, but the games are so spread and then they put a load of games together. It's just like, not been fun as well. But absolutely freezing at the moment as well. Send Antony to Nice on loan. I think we want to get money for Antony. Did I share this story on my screen about Ten Hag? I wanted to get some story up about Ten Hag, but I don't know if I shared it on my screen. It was said Eric Ten Hag's position as Manchester United manager is under threat as Sir Jim Ratcliffe begins to make major changes. Potter, De Zerbi and Francesco Ferrari are among names that have continuously been talked about. Now, that was said by Team Talk, and I don't think Team Talk are the best source of information out there to go off, but they're sort of saying and speaking about Ten Hag's position and job potentially being under threat. Apparently, Newcastle are going to go in for Morgan Gibbs-White, but a deal could be difficult in January. That would be a big statement from Newcastle if they could get Morgan Gibbs-White in to replace Almiron. That would be really good, but I don't think that will happen as well. But that's sort of what's been said on Ten Hag. But I think, as I've said, and I'm going to say this again, with all things Manchester United, with all and any decisions that can be made, I think it won't be made until Mayish. I think they're going to see what Ten Hag does, see how we look at the end of the season, see how certain players do. And I think that's when the real planning begins. I think they have ideas like, okay, we're going to get rid of Antony because he's just not been good enough. I think they have ideas. I think INEOS have visions, but I don't think any major decisions will be made until later on. And I think sometimes every bit of information, even if it comes from Romano and Ornstein, you just have to take with that little bit of caution saying, well, we just don't know how the next few months are going to pan out. And that will obviously change the plan and that will change the directions of things. I think we have to assess that as well. Anyway, people, please do hit that like button. Of course, subscribe on the way out as well. We'll just dive into a few final chats. Unless the structure changes massively, this club would swallow up all those gaffer candidates. 100% agree. Eric Ten Hag should stay and improve our football with the new director. Yeah, I'm at the point where we replace managers every 2 years. Why don't we change the structure? Why don't we get rid of the players? Why don't we give the manager a bit more time and then see how things go and assess if he's good enough? I want to see a better style of play from Ten Hag. I want to see progress. I want to see improvement. But I think, we've got to change the structure. We've got to change the players before we think of changing another manager. Listen, people, going to wrap up today's live stream here. So close to 250 likes. So do hit the like button on the way out. Subscribe if you're new. There could be a bonus video coming out tonight. I want to make another video tonight. But it will depend how much time I've got. So do stay out because there could be a good video out tonight. If not, I'll be back tomorrow. Live streams in the evenings, videos in the day, and then live streams in the day at weekends. See you next time. Bye.